Hey everybody, Dr. Green here. Today I'm going to be providing an overview of how to work with your second reflection regarding Hadoop and HDFS. So we're going to walk through this sort of one piece at a time. First item, create a new repository on gitlab.com. So if you go to gitlab.com, you'll see we have our naming scheme here, which we have used in the class before. We'll go, you may have to log in. I am already logged in. Going to go ahead and create a blank project. My awesome project is going to be named CS for this class 6500 Spring 2021 Reflection O2 Green. I'm going to go ahead and say initialize the repository with a README, and we'll create our project. Oh, I accidentally put a quotation on the end. Always look for those. Create project. There we go. The first thing we always do is go in and add me as a member. So we'll go in and add rgreen13 as a developer. We'll set the expiration date for the end of the course. We'll go a week early just to make sure. There we go, right? We are all good, and we will go back to our project. Okay, there we go. We have our project there. We are in good shape. Let's go back to our assignment. Add green arm. Clone this repository or this repository to do this. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and copy that link location. And I'm going to go to my desktop. I'm going to say, here's a new folder that I want. We'll call this folder. Let's go ahead and rename it. CS 6500. There we go. So now I'm going to open my terminal. Now, if you're on Windows, you may be thinking, well, he's on a Mac. How can I do this? Creating folders is basically the same idea. The terminal can be used as either the command line or PowerShell. I would greatly prefer that you use PowerShell. It'll help you a lot in this exercise. The first thing we're going to do is change to our desktop directory. You'll see we have our directory there. We are going to go in, change directory to CS6500. Great. And now we are going to run the command we were supposed to run, git clone. Okay. This will go ahead and clone this repository. You will see here if I go in the Dockerhadoop directory, I have a whole bunch of different things here which will probably not make a whole lot of sense to you at the moment. But we are going to go over that and make it happen. So what we've done here is we have actually cloned a repository that contains some information regarding some Docker containers. What is Docker, you may ask? Docker is this wonderful technology. You can look through the website here. This is docker.com. It talks about Docker Hub, Docker Desktop. And what we are going to do with this is it allows us to create containers from images. And what are those containers? Those containers you can think of as lightweight virtual machines. So in the past where you would do something like download VirtualBox, create a virtual machine, install Linux, we don't have to quite do all that. So to get started, you can go ahead and get started. You want to download Docker Desktop. For Mac or Windows, you can install it. It works very well. When you download for Windows, I strongly encourage you during the installation process to make sure that you select using the Windows subsystem for Linux or Linux containers. But on Windows, there's one other step that you need to do. You'll notice here I say install Docker. If you are using Microsoft Windows, you have to perform a few additional steps for this to work properly. So let's go ahead and open up our Docker page. If we open up our Docker page, it gives us a brief explanation of this and some more things about Docker. It tells us where to download this and gives the same caveats about WSL2 and using Linux containers. Now, the one thing you do have to do before doing this in order for it to work correctly is you need to have your version of Windows 10 upgraded to either the Enterprise or Education Edition. So we'll go ahead and click this link. You'll see it brings us to the Student Developer Services. We'll go ahead and we will sign in here. Okay, I'm already signed in, you'll see. We will go to our portal. Just as it says here, click on portal. Once we're in the portal, this will take just a second, hopefully, to load up. There we go. Click on Education. Click on Software. And now that we're in here, we can type Windows 10. And I'm going to type the full Windows 10 Education. Now you will see if you look back at our instructions, we get down to here, type Windows 10 Education in the search box. Click on either entry that does not contain the N. So if you jump in here, find one of these that doesn't contain the N, go ahead, click View Key. It'll validate, it'll give you a key. Copy, save that URL or that key, keep it in a very safe place because you are going to need it. What you're going to do is you are going to open up your Start menu and type Activation. You will open the activation settings and click Change Product Key, and you will enter that there. After that, it will take a little bit of time, but Windows will upgrade itself to the educational version. Without this version, you will not be able to use Docker properly, so it's imperative that you do this. Now, this is free as part of your BGSU education, so please do that. Make sure it works and get it all set. Once that is set, you can get things up and running. Okay? You have Docker Hadoop repository. There are a variety of tasks you may want to complete. So say we want to start a cluster. Let's take a look at this before we do. I'm going to go ahead and bring up Visual Studio Code here to show you all about this. So I have my VS Code. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to open up that folder on my desktop. CS6500, Docker Hadoop, here we go. And this is all of the code that I had downloaded. You'll see that based on what you've learned about HDFS and Hadoop, there is a base, a data node, a history server, a name node, Nginx, a node manager, a resource manager, submit. And then you will see some other files down here. So you can read through this README file. It'll tell you a lot of stuff and fill you in about configuration. You can read the make file. Will also give you some good information. You'll see here that what we're actually using are Docker containers based on Big Data Europe 2020. They've done a wonderful job at doing these. Now, the tool that we will be using to work with here is called Docker Compose. You'll see that Docker Compose is a nice little file like this, and it sets up everything that you would expect in an HDFS cluster or in a Hadoop cluster. We have a name node that's based on this image. We have a data node that's based on this image. We have a resource manager that is based on this image, a node manager that is based on this image, a history server. Okay? We can dig in. You can actually see more information about all these in here. You'll see the actual Docker files and everything are contained, all the files that run those, and all the wonderful things that they can do. Okay, so this is something we can do, take a look at, and we'll be modifying this in a little while as need be. But the thing to focus on is this Docker Compose file. We are going to use a tool here called Docker Compose. What Docker Compose does is allows us to instantiate multiple container images while also orchestrating the network. So I'm going to use the command Docker Compose up here. You can also use the command Docker Compose down. You may also run this command with a -D, which means to run it in the background, but I'm going to run it in the foreground here. So if I run Docker Compose up, you'll see a whole bunch of crazy happening. Yours may look a little bit different because at first it's going to have to download the container images. And I'm just going to switch over here a little behind the scenes. You can see these are all the containers that are starting to run right now. All of these are just starting up. Right, they're the ones I just started. But the other thing I can look at is Docker images, and this lists all the images. Now you'll see here are all my BDE containers. You will note that these are all big containers. They're a little over 1 gigabyte, so this is going to take a little time for your system to download. You're going to need some space here. Okay, so you'll see we are actually up and running here. Right, so this is starting everything. There's no errors. Everything is doing wonderfully. Now there's a bunch of things you may want to do here. So once we have this cluster started, you may want to log into the name node so that you can do some things. Okay, so let's do that. We will go in from our command line and we will say Docker PS. Okay, so let's look for the one that says name node, and you can see it right here. This is my name node. Right, it's telling us that that is my name node right there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear this and I'm going to say the same command, var grep name node. Okay, so you'll see I have this Docker ID right here. So what I can do in order to connect to that is I can say docker exec -it, the ID name, and bash. Now what this does is this executes the bash command within this container interactively. Okay, so basically what I'm doing is connecting to this, and you'll see it drops me right in. You'll see my prompt has changed. I'm now inside the Linux container. If I do this, it looks like Linux. It's a nice little thing. Everything's running and we're in good shape. Now at any point I want to leave my container, I can just exit. Okay, that's wonderful. This is great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up a directory here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to clone my own repository that I am going to use for doing my code. So here is my reflection. I'm going to go ahead. I'm using SSH. I'm going to go ahead and clone that. Okay, it says I've cloned an empty repository. That's wonderful, no big deal. Now, if I look in here, you know, I'm going to create my normal files, my README, which I will format later. And if I look back at my assignment, we will see that it tells us how to do a bunch of things. Start a cluster, share a directory, upload a file to the cluster, log into the name node. And you'll see this is the command I just did. When I wanted to log into the name node, I actually ran this. Okay, wonderful. I can exit the container by saying exit. I can bring down the cluster by either typing in docker compose down within the right directory, or I can just break my everything that's running there with the control X. Okay. Do note for this assignment, for this reflection, you will have to do HDFS in two parts. In one part, you're creating a file called part1.sh, which is a script that runs HDFS. And part two, you will be using Python to do the very same thing. Okay, so, and we have instructions down here. I'm going to let you follow the instructions, but I'm going to show you a few things that you may want to know how to do. So first things first, I sort of want to connect back to this container. Now, one thing I do want to show you, this container has a name of name node, so I can just do the same thing. I can just use the name, I can connect there. This is great, I have this. You will note the Hadoop command does work, right? So it does all these things. You're going to be working with Hadoop HDFS, right? So you will see all this is going to work quite well. You'll be able to do this. Many of the commands in the first part tell you to do various things with files and with directories. So if you need to do some information, right? So make a directory, create called activity1. You can come over here and you can see this is at hadoop.apache.org. It's the HDFS commands. And the ones we're going to look at right now are the DFS commands, right? HDFS, DFS are the commands that you're going to want to use. Okay, so if I go ahead, I'm going to clear my screen, HDFS, DFS. You'll see it actually works. And I can use all the different commands. For instance, I can do an HDFS, DFS, LS. It's going to yell at me a little bit because I did not use the right command, but you will see we have all these: HDFS, FSEC, gitconf, groups, OEV, all these kind of stuff, okay? So we have all of the things that we could want here: DFS admin, DFS router, all these kind of things. You'll be able to do everything that you want simply by looking through all of these commands, okay? So, and this is where you generally want to look, is in the commands. Now, I know many of you are going to skip out on things and say, well, hey, you know, I watched some of this stuff. I looked in this. What command should I use? Do remember, you can look in your book. You can also search for these answers, right? List all files in HDFS. What is the command to do this? Well, I typed it incorrectly. It is -ls. Right? And you will see there's no such file or directory, nothing's been created, so on and so forth. Okay, so we can work through this. We can work with everything we need to do. We can run the commands we need, all those kind of things. Now, the big question for you is, how do I do my assignment? Because you are going to need to move files back and forth. Well, you could work right here. This is not the best place to work in the root, so maybe you want to make a directory called workspace. I'll go here, I'll touch my part1.sh, that just creates the file. You'll see it right there. I'll touch my part2.py, those are both there. Wonderful, okay, so I can work with those, I can do whatever I want. But what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna start running HDFS commands, right, to accomplish all these different things. Say you did all your work, you're all nice and happy, part1.sh is full. Well, here's the question, how do I get it back? Well, let me show you my preferred method because I think it is the easiest way. First off, I am going to just use a break command. I use Control-C, you can use Control-X. It's going to shut down all of my nodes. Second, I am going to go back into my Docker Hadoop directory, and I am going to go ahead and I am going to look at my Docker Compose. And I am going to look for my name node because I know that's where I log in. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I want to mount a volume. All a volume is a mapping between a directory on your computer into inside the container. Okay? So say I want to map some directory. I'm going to create a directory called /workspace. And what I want to map is my repository, this right here. Okay? So what I'm going to do, and in Windows you would right click and say properties. On a Mac I'm going to say get info. And I'm going to get the path here. I'm going to copy that. And you'll see I'll put it right here. So /user/greenr/desktop/cs6500. Hey, this might look a little different on Windows, but it should work fundamentally the same. One thing I strongly suggest is that when you're creating these folders in these directories, do not use any spaces in the paths or in the folder names. So don't have a name like that. Use an underscore. The spaces have a long history of screwing things up with Docker. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into my directory. I'm going to go say Docker compose up. Everything's going to run. It's going to take just a moment here. See, this is all running. Okay. So I'm going to go back in here. You'll see it kicked me out of the container I was in because it shut down. And let's see, we are going to do exec node bash. Let's see if it's up and running. Hey, ls, there we go. You will see right here I now have a workspace directory that was not there before. And you will see it actually has the Docker Hadoop and my reflection directory in there. So I can go into CS6500 and you'll see my README is right there. So what does this mean? This means that if you look inside that README, there is nothing. But if I go in here and I will go ahead, let me just drop this right into VS Code real quickly. README. I will go ahead and edit this. Okay, and now if I go back here and I say cat, you will see the changes are actually right here. Okay, so I can do this. This is fine. Many of you will be trying to do something like this because you have a little Linux. It'll say not found. I believe, let's see, this is apt-get install. Well, you're going to have to do an apt-get update first if you want to install any software. This is a Debian-based distribution. And then you can do apt-get install vim, right? You'll see it will add it to this. You can say yes. And then I can use my Vim editor, which many of you are familiar with, or VI. You can add Emacs, all that kind of stuff. All right. So this is good. When you're working on this, you may do a part1.sh. You'll notice you may need to make it executable. You can do this, right? And now I can actually execute that by doing /part1.sh. And we should be in very good shape. In addition, you will see, let's see what happens when we do Python. Python is not involved. Let's do an apt-get update. Apt-get install Python 3 is what we would like here. You can go ahead and say yes. And apt-get install Python 3-pip, I believe it is. That's correct, so let's do those. You will see it will update these. It's going to download some various Python libraries. It's going to install them all. It will take just one moment to get everything updated and ready to go. There we go. And now you'll see we have pip3. We're going to say pip3 install HDFS because we want to use our HDFS interface to Python. This will go ahead and install and we will be in good shape. Okay, so for the second part of this assignment, you're going to be using Python to work with this using the HDFS CLI. You will see this is what I just used to install it here. And now what you want to do is look straight at the Python bindings. Okay, you will see here that to use Python, it actually is not that hard. You will say from HDFS import your insecure client. client, insecure client, host port, and I will provide a file with a port number for you to use for that configuration. And then it walks you through everything, right? I can read and write files. It tells you how to read and write files. It tells you how to explore the file system, right? Retrieve a file or folder, content summary, list all files inside a directory, right? All these kind of things. And there's other methods built on as well, okay? You can look through these. You can look through the advanced usage and also through the API reference to see the functions that you need to call to accomplish what you've done. But for this class, this is an upper level, 6,000 level computer science based course. So I expect that you have some experience or are able to get yourself up to date with Python. If not, simply search for Learn Python in 10 minutes. Hey, here's a good example. Any of these will walk you right through what a Python file looks like, how to use Python, how to use different functions, numbers, classes, file IO, etc. There's lots of good tutorials, and you can also lean on me or your classmates using Discord. Okay? So that is your setup for reflection number 2. The most challenging part of this reflection will be setting up Docker and then finishing both the HDFS CLI and the command line interface. So I hope it goes well. Let us give you strong support on Discord and via email and via Canvas. And until then, I'll see you next time online.